The previous basket is under review.
Welcome in to another episode of Weekend Under Review. That is Matthew Winick. I am Brian Rauf. We got a fun week of games to get to, Matthew. We got a fun weekend of games to get to. But first, got to make sure that you subscribe to Basket Under Review. The Basket Under Review Discord gets you access to all of our paywalled content at basketunderreview.com, as well as the Discord, which features Shirley Donovan's insights and intel. It's just the best collection and the biggest collection of college basketball sickos that there is on the internet. Make sure you tell a friend as well. There's nothing better than growing that community of college basketball diehards. You want more people to talk about college basketball? You want to just share the way that we cover this game? I am a little bit biased when I say this, but I do think that we at Basket Under Review, both on the Discord on basketunderreview.com and all of these shows that are available to you on the YouTube channel and in your podcast feeds, I do think we cover the sport better than anybody else, or at least as good as anybody else. The newsletter that it gets sent out typically features all of the content that's on the site in any given day, and there's always 4, 5, 6 new pieces of content on the site. I don't think you can get a better value than that, particularly if you're a college basketball fan. So make sure that you are subscribed. If you are not, do so. If you already are, tell a friend, tell 2 friends, tell 3 friends. That's how we continue to grow this thing and keep building this awesome community of college basketball fans. All right, Matthew, let's dive in to the biggest games of the week. None were bigger than Louisville and Kentucky. Cardinals got the 96-88 victory. They led by as many as 20 in the second half. Looked a little dicey. So we got towards the end there, but the Cards ultimately held on, pulled it off. What was your biggest takeaway from the game?
I don't know if the biggest takeaway is necessarily Louisville. Listen, they played well. They were not a perfect team. They're still very 3-point reliant. They took 11 more threes than twos. This is something we knew coming into the game. I said in the preview that there were probably going to be more threes than twos in this game. Kentucky was even 50-50, and then Louisville took 11 more threes. I think the biggest thing is Kentucky. They don't seem like they have a second gear. They have a lot of really good players, and maybe Jaden Quaintance, when he eventually returns from his knee injury, is that second gear. He could be a top 10 NBA draft pick. He's an elite defender at the 5 spot, but he's going to be playing this Mark Pope system, which is very pass-heavy from the bigs. It's not something he did a lot of at Arizona State. Otega Owe does not look necessarily as explosive as last year. Perhaps that's because he doesn't have Amari Williams passing him the ball off of that high post. Probably we underrated Amari Williams' value as just a giant man who can really pass the basketball. That's a hard thing to replicate. The shooting is solid. Denzel Aberdeen's playing a lot better than I expected, but Mo Diabate is not playing up to his potential coming over from Alabama. And then just go up and down the roster, there's a lot of role players and not a lot of stars.
I think we fell victim to the case, as we do oftentimes when you have really good players returning, of thinking maybe there was more that Owe could grow into, right? Where maybe the version we saw last year is the maximum version of Owe, which is really, really good, right? I think you take that more often than not. But that's probably the second guy or third guy on a championship level team or a Final Four level team, right? And I think you're seeing the need for somebody to step up above that if you're Kentucky. Now, Owe is not going to play the way he did in this game every single game. This was not his best game. He's going to play better. This is still game 3 for Kentucky on the season. We're not going to make any final confirmations about who Kentucky is at this point in the season, right? But they were at their best, I thought, when Jalen Lowe was running everything. And this was his first game back. He saw the shoulder deal, so he's not in his full form yet. As you mentioned, Quaintance isn't playing yet for Kentucky. So this Kentucky team is still far away from what the final product is going to be. But I do think that we're continuing to see if Kentucky is going to be the Final Four team they're expected to be. Owe is going to be one of the guys. I don't think Owe is going to be the guy. Like if he wins SEC Player of the Year, I think that's more because Kentucky does really well than him being like a 17, 5-5 and phenomenal defender kind of guy.
Put it this way. If you told me that 3 players in this game took more than 11 shots, and you were like, for Louisville, they have 2 of them. It's Mikal Brown and Ryan Conwell. I'll be like, okay, well, that's exactly what Louisville wants. Those are their 2 best players. And then if you told me the only player that took double-digit shots for Kentucky was Denzel Aberdeen and it was 20, then I would tell you that's probably not what Kentucky wants. And inevitably, that's what it comes down to. Louisville's stars were stars and they were used like stars. And with Kentucky and Mark Pope and they're sort of, pass the ball around offense, it really is a pretty offense to watch and to execute. But you have to have the guys to execute it. And unlike last year where they had Kobe Brea, probably, if not definitely, the single best shooter in the country, and Amari Williams, the best big man passer in the country, it's just, it doesn't seem like they have the pieces to fill the roles. Whereas Louisville and Pat Kelsey's up-tempo scheme where they're shooting a ton of threes, there's ball movement, they have an elite roller in Sananda Frew. Their personnel exactly matches the scheme that their coach wants to play.
Yeah. Last thing I'll say on Oweh is last year his aggression was so big for Kentucky on the offensive end because they didn't have a lot of guys who would get downhill that way. This year's team does. And you mentioned Aberdeen taking as many shots as he did. You don't want him taking that either. Like, the strength of this Kentucky team is the depth of good options you have. You want to spread that around a good bit. I want to see more of that from Kentucky. But the Louisville aspect of this, like, this was the prototype, and I think what the ideal scenario of how you want Louisville to look. Mm-hmm. Michael Brown was phenomenal. Like, we've talked all season long about how good these freshmen have been, and this was Michael Brown's coming out party. This was his chance to make his mark on the big stage, and he really did that. He looked like the guy who can be the centerpiece of a Louisville team that makes a long run in the NCAA tournament, that potentially wins the ACC, because you can't tell me definitively that this Louisville team can't, the way they looked against Kentucky in that game. Like, you put Duke in that arena that night playing Louisville, you put UNC in that arena that night playing Louisville. Louisville's beaten both those teams probably by more than they beat Kentucky in this game. Like, they looked
the scary part
phenomenal.
Is they only hit 33% of their threes. Imagine if they're a 37% shooting team on the year and they hit their average.
Right. Like, you saw Conwell play well. You saw McNeely play well. Now, Kentucky did pick on him a little bit defensively, which I think is going to be something that you see teams do, but McNeely's shooting can offset that. You saw Frew play well. I mentioned before the game that I expected Kentucky's front court to have an advantage over Louisville's, and I thought they played to about a push. Malachi Marino needs more minutes for Kentucky. I think I'd much rather see him than Brandon Garrison at this point, but that's another topic for another day. I thought Louisville's front court played fine. The difference was Michael Brown was the best player on the court, and Ryan Conwell was probably number 2.
But that's the crazy thing, right? Is like, okay, Isaac McNeely gets hunted defensively. Put in Kobe Rogers. He's one of their best perimeter defenders. Not as much of a shooter, but switch that up. Sananda Frew is getting, I don't know, he's not able to get his looks off of the roll. Ali Khalifa, like one of the best offensive big men in the country, off the bench. And some of the passes he makes, he had 4 assists in 15 minutes. Kashawn Pryor, their projected starting 4, starting 5 coming into the year, played 2 minutes in this game. They didn't even have Zougiris, their other European big who was supposed to make a big impact. They have an embarrassment of riches, and yet Kentucky had the most expensive roster. Down one guy. Louisville's roster from 1 to 12 is the best in the country.
I don't know if I'm going to go that far.
From 1 to 12.
I don't know if I'm going to go that far, but they're in the conversation. Like, I think this was a statement for Louisville. I tweeted this out during the game. I can't imagine how cathartic that felt for Louisville fans, given what that program has been through for the last half decade, right? To beat Kentucky, and I know the final score was 8, and it got a little dicey at the end, but to really handle Kentucky for a majority of that game at home and do it in a non-fluky way, right? With a team that can get you excited for the rest of the year about what they can accomplish. Like, this is a Louisville team that, yeah, they're in the Final Four. Yeah, I sure, that looks like a possibility. They win the national title. Yeah, sure, I can see that. I don't know if I'm going to predict that right now, but everything is on the table for this Louisville team. And we were a little bit unsure about what maybe that looked like before this game because they hadn't faced this level of competition. I think you can elevate them into maybe not the top tier teams in the country, but certainly top 10 team in the country, that maybe top second, that second tier, maybe behind the top tier. they can do whatever they want to do this season. Like they have the potential to do whatever they want to do this season. And that bodes incredibly well for Pat Kelsey. Must feel really nice for Louisville fans to have that on the table, again, given what they've gone through. After that was Illinois and Texas Tech on Tuesday night. Tuesday night was just a banger of a night, college basketball watching. This was another phenomenal game. The Illini won 81-77 against the Red Raiders. I left this game feeling better about both teams, to be honest with you. Both did not have their full complement of players. It was a very, very good game. Illinois won, taking advantage of being at home, I thought. But what did you see from this matchup?
If you told me that Texas Tech had 6 threes and 3 free throws in the entire game at Illinois, I would tell you they got crushed. So the fact that it was a 4-point game and they were in it until the end says a lot about the upside, because JT Toppin is unstoppable. I don't care who you throw at him. He has the best touch around the rim in the sport, and it's not even close. He's unbelievable in the paint. And like, I don't know how he didn't run out of gas. The guy played 39 minutes. He's like switched on to Stojakovic on every possession, guarding isolations. He had 11 boards. He had 3 steals and 3 blocks. Like, that guy has an insane motor for a big man. But with Texas Tech, because they have 0 bench, especially right now, with Josiah Mosley and Luke Bamgoye, their probably two best defenders out of the lineup right now, there is no margin for error. And if Tyree Bryan and Donovan Atwell combine for 6 total points and 2 made threes, they're not going to win big games, because you can double, triple team JT Top, and you can put so much pressure on the Christian Anderson top and pick and roll if you don't have the spacing alongside it. And those two are fantastic shooters. The fact they hit nothing is really the reason why they lost this game. Interesting Illinois perspective as well, but I don't know if you have Texas Tech thoughts you want to spew out first.
Yeah, I think the reason you feel good about this, if you're Texas Tech, despite the loss, is that I think you win this game if Bamgoye plays, or at least you have a better chance of winning, because that was the big hole that Illinois exploited, was attacking the rim, right?
Yeah.
And then you insert one of the 2 or 3 best shot blockers in the country, at least from a conservative standpoint, right? That changes the game at least some. Your point on Toppin is absolutely correct. I wrote a little bit about this in the Rauf report that's up on basketballreview.com. There is a chart from CBB Analytics where I compared like interior shooting percentage versus attempts. Everybody in the country is like generally grouped. JT Toppin's like, if he wasn't in the screen, he'd be off the screen in terms of his efficiency and the attempts for him. It's absurd. I think it's the softest touch and the most automatic bucket when he gets the ball in the low post since Jahlil Okafor.
Yeah, I mean, Jahlil Okafor was all huge shoulders and huge hands.
Correct.
JT Toppin is like a normal sized big man. He doesn't have insane proportions. He just has the best touch.
Yeah, but the way that, like, again, being local in Raleigh, right around Duke, you'd watch those games, and it was like anytime Okafor got the ball in the post and shot it, it felt like it was a magnet to the rim, and it was going in no matter what, no matter how it looked coming off his hand. Toppin's the first guy I've seen since that, where it's like as soon as he puts it up, it's like, I don't know how that's going in, and then it just hits nothing but net. It's insane. It's absurd. It's incredible. From the Illinois perspective, I thought this was a version of Andrei Stojakovic that they were hoping to get. There were questions about his efficiency from his time both at Cal and Stanford. He was a raw production guy, but the efficiency didn't really match with that level of production. There was some question as to whether he was just the beneficiary of somebody's got to get the points on these bad teams. I think we are starting to see the flip side of that, where maybe his efficiency wasn't the same because there wasn't anybody to take pressure off of him, right? He only shot 1 3 in this game. He wants to get to the rim. He wants to attack the basket, and Bamgoye's absence was a big part of that. 15 of his 16 shot attempts were inside the arc, towards the rim. I think that's what you want to see from him, and he shot 11 of 16 in this game high 23 points, or Illinois high 23 points, excuse me. If Illinois gets that version from him and his job is made easier by all the weapons Illinois has, the ceiling for this Illinois team might be as high as Louisville's.
Yeah, freshman Andrei Stojakovic at Stanford was not very good. Sophomore Andrei Stojakovic at Cal was terrific on a team that did not help him. Yeah. And so now you're at a team that will really help him, and they're still without two of their best players in Mihailo Petrovic and, of course, Tomislav Ivisic. It's going to make a huge difference in his efficiency and going downhill. But that's my big takeaway. 5 assists on 29 made field goals is really bad. Now, granted, Ivisic, at least the one that didn't play, and Petrovic are probably their 2 best passers. So they're short their 2 best playmakers. And Texas Tech's in like that drop, and they're funneling them in and avoiding the 3-pointer. I get it. But the playmaking, you can ISO a team that has literally 5 dudes that is pretty undersized for a power conference team. And maybe that's more of a Texas Tech flaw, and Illinois was just taking what was in front of them. But whenever I see 5 assists on 29 made field goals, that's at least a little bit of a red flag. There's a lot of contextual clues to suggest it's not going to be an issue. And of course, I'm just nitpicking a team that just beat another awesome team, but that's still a pretty notable number.
Yeah, Illinois definitely went mismatch hunting in this game and leaned into the ISO ball for sure. I don't know if that's going to be something they do all the time, but as you mentioned, given Texas Tech's injury concerns, may have been the smart thing to do in this game. We'll see if Illinois kind of veers away from that moving forward. But again, feel really good about both those teams. Feel good about Louisville, Kentucky as well. Like I think any of those 4, despite the losses for Kentucky and Texas Tech, you still feel okay about where you're at. I don't think you could say the same thing about Creighton. Gonzaga beat them 90-63. It was relatively close in the first half. Very quickly got out of hand in the second half. Graham Ike was awesome. Gonzaga continues to look great. That was my big takeaway, honestly, is that maybe we were underselling collectively, just as college basketball media, this Gonzaga team. But I also don't know how much Creighton really had for them in this one. But what did you see?
I saw a lot of different things. Creighton is not a top 50 team right now. I think that's fair to say. They have a lot of growing to do. There's a lot of holes on that roster. But for me, it's all about Gonzaga. And the number one question, the $1 million question, can they shoot? When your starting center goes 4 of 4 from 3, yes, you can shoot. However, if your starting center is not a 100% 3-point shooter on 4 attempts per game, I'm not so certain. Now, there are teams that Gonzaga will just grind to a pulp. In the Creighton mold, where therefore Jackson McAndrew, despite being pretty tall, is just someone that you can bully and break down, and he's not going to beat you off the dribble. He's not a ball handler. So you can kind of throw Braden Huff at him in the corner, put a hand up, and you're fine because you're not worried about getting blown by. There are teams that have big 4s that can really put a body into Braden Huff, because Braden Huff, if you got the ball in the post, that was 2 points every single time. And there are teams that have 4s that can blow past him. This is not going to work in every single matchup, but the biggest takeaway for me is Gonzaga has enough depth that they're kind of matchup proof. If you're going to make them shoot, then fine, you're throwing Adam Miller into the mix. If you're going to play big, then boom, you get the 2 bigs. If you're going to play small, switch it up to point guard with Braden Smith and Mario Sansuperi, who looked fantastic in this game. I didn't even mention Tyon Grant Foster. Like, they have so many different pieces and they have so many different ways to beat you that it's kind of like the first half is them just figuring out which way they want to beat you with. They figured that out, what made sense to beat Creighton down with. And in the second half, they went on a 30-5 run because they figured out the equation.
I think Sansuperi is the key for Gonzaga moving forward and the ceiling, because everything you just mentioned is correct. But what is the ceiling, right, if you're running everything through Tyon Grant Foster and Adam Miller? The floor is higher than I think we gave them credit for. But the ceiling is not like what Gonzaga has come for their expectations to be. Can you make a Final Four? Like that, those are the expectations around Gonzaga every single year. I think of those 2 guys, even with Ike and Huff and everybody else, if those 2 guys with Jalen Worley as well are the ones you're running everything through and counting on to elevate you, they can elevate you to a point, but I don't think they can get you to that point. Mario Sansuperi is the guy who can get you to that point, I think, because he's the unknown, but also one of my big questions with Gonzaga coming into the season was how the point guard situation was going to look. I think we have our answer for that. It's him. Like he's been far and away the most productive guy they've had running the show for Gonzaga this season. I'm excited to see how that unfolds for Gonzaga as he gets more comfortable in the system and how that goes.
I mean, let's give Braden Smith some credit, though. He has 12 assists and 2 turnovers in 3 games.
Oh,
That's a point.
he hasn't been bad. I'm not trying to say he's been bad. I just don't know if he's somebody who elevates everybody. And now this we're looking at a point guard position that just had Ryan Nembhard, right? So like the standards are also pretty high, but I think there's a difference between like let's settle things down and we're good enough to make the Sweet 16 as Gonzaga does every year, versus like, hey, can we really do some damage and make a Final Four and let's see what happens there.
The thing with Tyon Grant Foster is like he was not used in a way that is effective to him because there are so many guys that are on ball, like Saint-Superi and Braden Smith kind of need the ball. Tyon Grant Foster took 7 shots, 6 of them were threes. He's not a three-point shooter. That's not his game. He didn't have a single assist. He was not used as a hub in any way, shape, or form. And this is what made Tyon Grant Foster so great at Grand Canyon. The reality is they don't need that.
Yeah.
If they don't need Tyon Grant Foster to be himself, and that's like a little worrisome where maybe the guards don't have a great game and Tyon Grant Foster just kind of relegated to the corner. Like you did not pay, no offense, pay for Tyon Grant Foster to be PJ Tucker, right? Like you paid for him to be a serious on-ball factor. And because of the emergence of Saint-Superi and probably because Gonzaga wasn't sure if they'd have Grant Foster, he's not really used in a role that makes a lot of sense. But embarrassment of riches, like there are worse problems to have.
Yeah, and I wonder too if he becomes like a super sixth man for them, where like you're the guy who to get the ball, you're still gonna play your 25 minutes, but it's just gonna be starting off the bench. I'd be curious to see how few does that.
Only one Gonzaga player played more than 22 minutes in that game, which is insane.
That goes to the final score. The one last thing I'll say about Creighton is like the guard struggled against this competition. As you mentioned with McAndrew, there's no interior presence for them. And like both those things are super concerning. I promise this is going to get to a Creighton point, and I'm not trying to talk about Georgetown as I seem to every episode. But one of the reasons why I talked about Georgetown breaking through in the Big East this year was that I did not think Creighton and I did not think Marquette, the teams like on the second tier, were very good. We saw Marquette lose by 23 to Indiana, and we've now seen Creighton get just blown out by Gonzaga. And now, like, Gonzaga's a good team, Indiana might be a good team too, but both those teams have legitimate problems. And so if you're looking at the Big East as a whole, St. John's is still very good. UConn is very good. We're going to get to them later when we're previewing games for the weekend. But outside of those, I do think the Big East is really wide open. And I know there are people who are high on what Creighton can be this season, and the potential is still there, certainly. And there are people who are high on what Marquette can be, and like teams like Butler have looked good. Or you can go down the list, and there are teams in the Big East that have looked good. Outside of those two, though, like it is wide open. Wide open.
It's UConn's world.
It is UConn's world. I agree. It was Braden Smith and Trey Kaufman-Wren's world when Purdue went on the road and beat Alabama on Thursday night. That was a really fun game, really great back and forth. Purdue finally created some distance the last 6 minutes of the game and then held on. We are recording right after that game ended. So just somewhat instant reaction. We're about probably 30 minutes since the game ended at this point in the podcast now. But what are your takeaways? What are your immediate afterthoughts after watching that?
This is a little bit of a long-winded, but here we go.
Yep.
So all summer I was fascinated with the defensive schemes, right? The difference between hedges/switches and drop coverage. Hedges/switches make a team beat you, and drop coverage makes players beat you. Alabama is extremely noted for playing drop coverage. That means they make players beat you, not teams beat you. Unfortunately, that means that they let the best player in the country, Braden Smith, beat them. Every single possession was fabricated by Braden Smith. And then finally, once Alabama was like, we can't play drop coverage against this guy because he's doing whatever he wants, and they finally double team him, then he dishes it off to Trey Kaufman-Wren, and he made the right read in the short roll every single time. There's no answer for this Purdue team. You either double the ball and Trey Kaufman-Wren beats you, or you play drop coverage and Braden Smith beats you. And the two of them alone beat Alabama. Now, granted, Alabama missed a lot of open threes down the stretch. They still hit 36% of their 44 three-pointers. They did what they wanted to do offensively: drive, kick, shoot. They hit them. Purdue did their best at limiting second chances, only 7 offensive rebounds for Alabama, 19 for Purdue. That's the Oscar Clough and Daniel Jacobson effect. But 8 of them were Trey Kaufman-Renn, who was now able to roam a little bit more at the 4 spot. The reality is Purdue had the best player in the country with the ball in his hands. Alabama let him make plays with the way that they play defense.
I wrote down during the game that Braden Smith, the scorer, opens up this Purdue offense for that reason that you mentioned. He has spent his career to this point as Braden Smith, the playmaker. And Braden Smith, the playmaker, was on pace to be, it might still be, I haven't done the math, the best assist guy in NCAA history, right? Like that was the storyline coming in, is can he break Bobby Hurley's record, which is, I think, still on the table. But for this Purdue team to win the national championship, I think he has to lean more into being a scorer first and playmaker second. And what you just said is the reason why. Nobody else on the perimeter for Purdue. They have good perimeter players. I don't mean to mention that they do not. This is not like someone slamming Fletcher Lawyer. This is not someone slamming the other wings they have on that roster. He is the guy who can create when he wants to and can score when he wants to. We've seen improved three-point shooting from him. He's always been great at the pull-up game. He's always been great getting to the rim. He just is a playmaker first. And when you have dominant bigs, that's okay to work off of. My big question with Purdue coming into the season, we've talked about it, I don't know how many times now on this podcast, the issues of playing 2 bigs, which Purdue was going to do because TKR and Oscar Clough and Daniel Jacobson are too good to leave off the court. Just how you make that work. And how you make that work is by either making defenses pay when they try and cover the 2 bigs, which Braden Smith is the only one who can really do off the bounce, or you make defenses pay attention to him, and it opens up the 2 bigs and the passing that they have. Because TKR was the guy who made the plays tonight. I think there was that stretch for like the 6-minute mark and the 5-minute mark left in the game where he had 3 assists. And it took a tie game that was going back and forth to Purdue being up 7 or 8. That happens. You can't stop it. Like you said, you just absolutely can't stop it. Moving forward this season, I think Purdue has to really lean into Braden Smith being the scorer. The playmaker part's always going to be there, but he's got to be aggressive hunting his shot for Purdue to be the best version of himself.
The 3-man front court of Jacobson, Clough, and Kaufman-Renn had 8 assists in this game. That's 50% of the team's assists. Half of their assists from the front court. 5 of them Kaufman-Renn, 2 Clough, 1 Jacobson. Like when you have 5 men passing the ball, 1 playmaker, but 5 passers, that changes everything. Because even though the outside shooting wasn't elite, at least in volume in this game for Purdue, when everyone's passing the ball like that, and then Braden Smith doesn't have to be the sole distributor, it just makes them so much more of a serious attack to have so many different pieces that they have to guard.
I know we're approaching 30 minutes here, and we still got a lot to get to. But from the Bama side of things, did you see anything from there that you feel better about, worse about with the Tide?
The front court's just not good. Yeah. This was the problem against St. John's, and they were a little bit lucky against St. John's because they did a good job in forcing Zuby Ejiofor and Bryce Hopkins to be shooters. That didn't work in this Purdue game because when they left Trey Kaufman-Renn open for those shots, he passed, right? He made really strong reads in the short roll, whereas St. John's kind of settled for those jumpers. They can't rebound. They got killed, absolutely killed on the glass. Quick math would say 52-28. That's insane. They only had 12 buckets on the inside. Noah Williamson and Aiden Sherrill is not a top 10 team's front court. Keaton Bristow is still injured, the transfer from Tarleton. He's more of a 3-4. No one's coming to save that front court. There's no Cliff Omarui. There's no Grant Nelson. There's no Jaren Stevenson. They're not big and they're not athletic, and it's going to be a problem.
Yeah. Williamson, trying to watch him like cover some of the motion that Purdue was doing was not great for him. If you are Alabama, you do take some solace in the fact that you weren't like shooting the cover off the ball from 3. As you mentioned, got out rebounded 52-28, and you were in this game at the end, right? So you get the guards who did not play well either. The Baron Fallon had an off game. you had a chance to beat a good Purdue team despite all of those factors. So if you are Nate Oates, if you're a Bama fan, you take some solace in that. But the fact you did get out rebounded by that much, the fact you did give up so much to Purdue's front court. I know Purdue's front court is good, but like that's a problem. Again, this is an Alabama team whose expectations are no longer, let's make the tournament and see if we can make the second weekend. Expectations are so much higher than that, as they should be. If you're going to get to that point, this has to get better. This has to get better.
Mm-hmm.
We touched on those 4 games. Obviously, there's a lot of other really intriguing games that happened this week. So just rapid fire. What are some other things you saw that you feel like are worth mentioning, worth monitoring for the next couple of weeks or so?
I was really concerned about Florida's backcourt going into the year with Boogie Fland and Xavier Lee because both of them are on-ball guys and neither of them are proven floor spacers at all. And that's been an absolutely giant problem early in the season where Xavier Lee is shooting 20% from 3 and Boogie Fland is shooting 17% from 3. That is not sustainable, and obviously it'll get better, but I don't think it'll get that much better, and that's a real problem on the ceiling of the squad.
I have down Florida's 3-point shooting on here too, because I think, like you said, it will get better, right? We talk a lot about how teams are going to regress when they're hot shooting, and they're going to come back down to the mean. There's also the flip side of that, where Florida's going to progress back up to a certain level. This is not a team who's going to shoot 21.1% for the rest of the season for 3. They're simply not. The question is what that level is. Is it, do they get back up to 35%? Does it sit at like 32? Because like Xavier Lee, there are some questions about the step up and level of play. Boogie Fland can make threes, but again, has been streaky or was streaky through his 1 year at college. Thomas Hawk at the 3 has not worked the best. Like, it's been okay. He's been clearly the best player. You got to play him.
He's our best player, yeah.
But it's been inconsistent in terms of like what him at the 3 has meant. So the progression for Florida is going to come from 3. They're going to start making some threes. It's just a matter of they're progressing to what level. Because I do think it's got to get much higher, obviously much higher than it has been, but it can't be like some. It's got to be a big, big bump for them to get to where they need to be. The other thing I saw, speaking of players at the 3 that don't work, Michigan's got to scrap the big lineup. Like Ade Mara was phenomenal against Wake Forest, saved Michigan against Wake Forest, but that was at the expense of Yaxel Lindenborg being any type of a back player.
No, it's true. It's 3 fantastic players on their own, but and honestly, it might work if your point guard wasn't Elliot Godot and your 2-man wasn't Roddy Gale. There's no shooting on this roster. They have to take threes, and they're taking them. They just don't have anyone that can hit them.
Yeah. You're going to have to find a way to rotate those 3, Yaxel, Mara, and Morez Johnson at the 4 and the 5, and understand like, hey, you guys are each going to play 27 minutes. I hope that's okay. Maybe you can get the big lineup in, like a 2 or 3 minute stretch each half, but that didn't work.
No,
that didn't work. Let's get to looking ahead to games this coming weekend. There's not as many marquee matchups as there was this past weekend, because this past weekend was flipping awesome. But there are a lot of really good games this weekend, too. The first one's going to be Friday night, 10 o'clock on Peacock, the old Pac-12 rivalry, I can't talk, between Arizona and UCLA. Arizona looks awesome. UCLA, Mick Cronin has fired himself already this year. I think they would like a marquee victory and a chance to really show what they can do. But what are you looking for in this game? What are some things that are going to decide the game in your mind?
Koa Pete and Mo Krivas with Tobe Awaka on the bench versus Tyler Bilodeau and Xavier Booker and Brandon Williams on the bench. Like that, UCLA and Arizona are 2 very good teams, 2 top 15 teams in my mind. But one has an elite front court and one has serious questions. UCLA has not defended the interior or rebounded well at all early in the season, and that's why they've kind of struggled out of the gate despite getting their wins. This is not the team. Arizona is not the team you want to play if you can't rebound or defend the rim, because they will make you pay. And UCLA does a good job of preventing rim attempts, but Arizona's running, and they're getting to the hoop, whether you like it or not. they're going to Xavier Booker is going to have the defensive game of his life because there's trouble awaiting in the interior for UCLA.
I agree with that wholeheartedly. There's also the fact of just the tempo in this game. Do you remember how excited we were in the exhibition season when UCLA started playing really fast and Donovan Dent looked awesome because Mick Cronin was like, hey, I have guys who can play fast and they're at their best for playing fast. Let's do this. Remember that? UCLA through 3 games is 352nd in the country in pace according to KenPom. They're going up against an Arizona team that traditionally plays fast. They're 34th in the country in KenPom. The natural Mick Cronin brain, and just I think it's a very logical thing to say, is like, hey, we're playing a team that wants to play fast. We don't know how they can execute in the half court because they don't shoot very well. Let's try and slow the game down. I think that's what UCLA will do. That's what they'll do. That hasn't been good for them so far. I think they need to do the opposite. Yep. But I don't know if they're going to.
It's impossible to say. It's impossible to even believe, but the Mick Cronin team has to play faster to win this game. It's never going to happen. It's not going to happen.
No.
Mick Cronin will never outpace Tommy Lloyd, but they should.
Yes, which of course means that they are going to slow the game down. And they're going to win because they slowed the game down. But that's just how things work.
Yeah.
Saturday, big game, 7 o'clock on Fox. BYU and UConn. I think this has a chance to be the game of the weekend, one of the games of the year potentially. I'm very much looking forward to this matchup. What aspects of this do you think are going to be the difference?
Honestly, I think it's the 5 spot. Obviously, AJ DeBonce is a superstar, but I think Alex Karaban, in a very different way, is also a superstar. So that's kind of a wash for me. As much as a lot of people might disagree, I think DeBonce and Karaban's kind of a wash in their own weird ways. Eye test ball watchers might not agree with me, whatever. The 5 spot, Terrace Reed and Keba Keita. Who stays on the floor? Because the backup 5s on these rosters are not very good. Eric Riba is still coming into his own, and I don't even have anyone I want to mention at the backup 5 spot for BYU right now. It's kind of a void. Whichever one of them stays on the floor, doesn't get into foul trouble, plays really well, I think this team wins that game because there's a lot of great talent across the board, but you can replace some of those pieces across the roster with some bench. You cannot replace the 5 production for either of these 2 starters, and that's going to be really key in a game that will be extremely physical. If the refs call a lot of fouls, we might be getting like Tyler Maruss versus Dwayne Karoma in big moments down the stretch if it really a lot of fouls are called.
I want to see UConn's offense against BYU's defense. BYU has not been clicking on all cylinders offensively, which you would expect for sure early in the season with the amount of newcomers that they have. I think that's fine. BYU will be fine. Defensively, though, they're 54th in efficiency per KenPom. They try and make you execute in the half court. That's what they did last year. That's what they've done this season. It's what they want you to do is beat them in the half court. Nobody runs better half court sets than UConn, right? Nobody is as good at like scheming up open shots and taking advantage of making the extra pass and making you work than UConn is. I think that's a test for UConn's point guards too, to get UConn to execute at a high level and get them into their sets and get things going. But I think this is a chance for UConn to take advantage of that. I think they have to in this game because that's what BYU's game plan is going to be, is slow you down. UConn's great when you slow them down. But there's not a problem with them executing in the half court. So that'll be an interesting component of that game to watch for sure. On Sunday, Houston and Auburn face off against each other at 3 o'clock on ESPN. Maybe it'll be on YouTube TV. We will see. Probably not. We're not holding our breath. Interesting dynamic in this game. Houston has not looked great this season. Auburn certainly has not. 2 different probably tiers these 2 teams are on. But you're looking at 2 pretty solid teams. So what in your mind is going to decide this game?
It's going to be guys that didn't play Division I basketball last year, because that's the name of the game for both of these teams, and they've all kind of come into their role in different ways. Keyshawn Murphy's hurt for Auburn, so that's been an even larger emphasis. There's been a lot of Philip Jovich. There's been a lot of Sebastian Williams-Adams, and they're going to have a handful against the physicality of Houston. For Houston, obviously, they haven't played anyone for real yet. Towson's a decent test, but still. Chris Sinak struggling a little bit offensively, dominant on the glass. And then Kingston Flemings. I think a lot of people, myself included, were like, okay, Isaiah Harwell is that backcourt rookie. Kingston Flemings has been awesome.
Yes.
Like, he is really impressive, and he's, for better or for worse, Milos Uzan has to move a little bit more off of the ball just because Kingston Flemings is so good on it. Uzan's still kind of figuring out what that really means for him. But if Flemings is as good as he's been early on in the season against real competition, and CNAC gets a little more offensive flow to go along with that rebounding, like, that's a starting five. And it's going to be very tough to beat that five-man rotation in a game, especially if Auburn is going to be shorthanded in the front court.
Yeah. I would expect Houston to really, really dominate Auburn down low and in the paint in this game. Another battle of tempos. Houston wanted to slow it down. Auburn wanted to play quickly. It's going to be a test for Houston handling Auburn's pressure. It's going to be a test for Flemings handling Auburn's pressure. We're going to see just how far along he truly is. But Houston does have the luxury of, like, hey, he's a little struggling. Uzan, let's settle us down. Right. I think Houston will be fine from that standpoint. I did see Kelvin Sampson this week. I think it may have been last weekend, really hyping up CNAC in post-game press conference, where he was talking about his rebounding, making sure he was praising that. It's like, we know the offense is going to come. Like, we know that's going to happen. And when he does, but like, what he's done right now has been incredible. That's a coach who knows how to push buttons and keeps your five-star engaged for sure. I mentioned I think Houston's got the advantage there. We'll get to our pick section. You were 3-1 last week. I was 1-3. So I'm now 6-7, trailing you. 6-7. You were 7-6. It's awful, man. My 6-year-old daughter's doing that now, and it's awful.
Get it off the pod. Get it off.
But we have these 3 games, very tight between the two of us. I'm going Houston to beat Auburn. Just the veterans, the talent, I think, is too much.
Yep, you got me there. Same deal.
BYU and UConn.
I'm going BYU. I know that this is in Boston. This is UConn territory. I think DeBonsa has a special game, and BYU figures it out.
UConn's best team in the country. Let's not ever think it. UConn.
Okay. Sure.
Arizona, UCLA.
Arizona, UCLA has too many front court problems right now.
I'm with Arizona as well. So BYU, UConn will determine if we were tied next week or not.
Wouldn't want it any other way.
I hope so. I hope so. We'll be back on Monday, recapping those games and all the other big games from the weekend. Also looking ahead to next week, where the Champions Classic is happening on Tuesday. We'll have previews for both those games and everything else going on around the world of college basketball.